Hello, folks. Welcome to another one of my podcasts, My Awakening, subtitled Bear's Journey Back to God. This is going to be episode 1, and essentially I'm just going to be talking about what does my awakening look like. It certainly isn't something that happened in bed, or maybe it is. Before we get into the heavy details, please like, subscribe, follow, and favorite this podcast. And please, by all means, share it with someone you know that could possibly benefit from it, because it may be the catalyst to changing their lives. So, if I were to look back on my entire life, I could see countless times that my awakening might have occurred, but all of those were moments in my awakening. I suppose I could tell you all of those moments, or maybe it'll be best if we just try to define my awakening. So here's how I see it. My awakening means that I'm waking from the human self into a God-centered self. It's the spiritual uplifting that brings me from thinking of God to knowing God. It kind of encompasses my entire being as it accesses my divine self, the light, my connection with God, my understanding that I'm not separate from God, that I am a child of God and we've never separated, and that my desire is to ultimately go home. It's a feeling deep within me that has always been there but hasn't really shined at this level before. It's a transformation for an intellectual being to a spiritual being that's balanced. It's taken me out of the church and eliminated the middleman. What I mean by that is I've found my highest connection from God from within me, not within a building or through a group. So when Jesus was talking to Peter, and this is a paraphrase here, and when Jesus said to Peter, "Peter, on this rock, build my church." In my heart, Peter didn't get the metaphor Jesus used. Here's my take on it. When he said on this rock, to me it meant the earth. He said, build my church. It meant tell everyone about God. It wasn't supposed to be only in a building, like what we saw the temple become in Jerusalem. It was supposed to be also in a building. Talk to everyone everywhere, not just in a synagogue or a temple. On the street, in the home, at the market, and yes, in the temples or buildings. To me, it meant spread the word around the world person by person. So the church is every step I take, everywhere. My awakening means that I've finally opened my heart and soul to going home to be the light of God, and that I don't need to see it to know that it's actually true. My awakening has brought insane clarity in how I connect with God here on earth. It's through my actions and my words that people will see and feel God's presence. It's through my charities and the giving that I do that God will shine through. It's my forgiveness of others and myself that I get to return to the hand of God. It's through daily communing with God, not just one day a week or only at bedtime. It's before, during, and after every moment that arises each day for me. I've learned how to talk to God as if it were my best friend, so that I can talk to it about anything, everything, anywhere, anytime, and actually hear God responding to me. My awakening has guided me to see the light in others, to know that we are all one spirit in God, and that every action I take will have an effect on all others on the planet. God was actually with me my entire life. I just didn't know how to communicate with it then. I was brought up Catholic, and I was even an altar boy for a few years, and I attended catechism classes, very typical for a Catholic. But during that time, I felt something wasn't quite right, like something was missing. A direct connection to God just felt missing. I felt like we were working too hard to be sin-free. We forgot that God made us in its image, a divine holy being. We had to read things and sing things and sit, stand, kneel, sit, stand, kneel, sit, stand, kneel. It just seemed like there was too much of a routine and it wasn't from the heart. It was as if the talks were being read to us instead of being felt and shared. I knew God didn't work with guilt or shame, yet that's what those years felt like. During my adulthood, I sought places of worship in search of the right feeling. It could have been Southern Baptist churches, synagogues, temples, Christian centers. It didn't matter. I was just looking to find something, somewhere. You name it, I tried them. Yet they all seemed to be missing the one piece that made the most sense to me. That God was in me and through me, and that we are all as one. So since I was a child, I had always resonated with Native American culture for many reasons, but I believed that how they saw things was more in alignment with what I believed I was missing. As far as I know, I have some Algonquin blood in my lineage, but I never cared to act on it or try to be something with it or go and seek out a card for anything. I just adapted to the indigenous cultures and their spiritual beliefs to the point I would use the name Creator in place of God. It just felt right. I'd take part in ceremonies and study the languages and heritage and the history. I went so far as to become a medicine wheel teacher and was able to reintroduce many Native Americans to what the wheel was and what it was used for with their ancestors and how to use it in their lives today. I've even been blessed to have done spiritual work with the Lakota and have visited many sacred sites in North and South Dakota. I used to play my Native American flutes at burial sites to assist in the cleansing of the spirits of the ancestors. But again, something was missing. My life went dark several times, as most people get to experience. During those dark times, instead of reaching for God, I was actually blaming God for my misery and my woes, as if it was the reason for my dysfunction. Suicidal thoughts and actions, as well as becoming a darn good alcoholic for most of my adult years, seemed to be the direction I took. Violent streaks that caused major damage to the recipients. Tearing through relationships with the all-or-nothing attitude, as if there were no gray areas in life. Never seeking a balance or a healthy partnership. 2 divorces and just a ton of baggage. Through it all, I basically denied God. Yet every situation that was dark, and especially the darkest ones, those seemed to be when God was with me the most. I can actually say that with honesty because I'm here to express it to you now, instead of pulling the trigger of that 365 Magnum with the barrel in my mouth and blowing my brains out 20-some years ago. God was the voice that said, take your finger off the trigger. It was the voice that said, don't have that next drink. It was the voice that said, don't go home with her. The Divine Mother that is God had wrapped its arms around me and provided me with the moment of feeling God's hand in mine. I just couldn't quite get out of my own way to stick with it. So what was it that brought me back to clarity with God? Well, somewhere around 2016, probably the spring of 2016, I started seeing this woman, and she had been going to this place called Unity of Sedona. It was a spiritual center, not a church, but a spiritual center. At that time, it made a ton of difference in how I saw things, making sure I called it a center, a spiritual center, and not a church. So during the second service I attended, the spiritual leader combined some incredible concepts: Native American culture, Buddhist teachings, teaching from Jesus and the Lost Scrolls, some Edgar Cayce into his topics, and all of it surrounded going to God. It was as if someone opened my chest and exposed my heart back to God. Since then, I've attended every Sunday service, unless I had a tour or had some other things that I had to do. I joined in some of the chaplain's trainings, attended spiritual classes, reading and practicing A Course in Miracles book, and others like it. I've changed the things I do in my free time to basically just things like creating self-help podcasts, playing my flutes, listening to God music, basically anything that's on K-Love radio station, and watching God or Jesus movies. It's almost as if I've taken away the action-adventure, drama, dismemberment, hate, and dark movies and things that used to be part of my life for things that are more positive, more uplifting, more spiritual, more God, more love, peace. Mostly, I've allowed myself to open my heart to bringing more goodness and love to those around me. I've always been a helper of sorts for the underdogs of life. Now I know why I do it and why I did it, so I do more of it. There was this one story back when I was in high school. There was this kid in school. He was mentally challenged. I won't give you his name, but he was this really difficult child, but his heart was insanely huge. A lot of the other kids at school would take advantage of his kindness and his inability to be at the same level mentally, and he would get picked on and so on. I just didn't have it in my heart to have that happen. So I would go up against anybody that was giving him a hard time. I even got into a fight with a senior when I was a freshman in high school, and I had to do it. It's just something I had to do. This kid could not protect himself, and he was being verbally and emotionally abused by these people. So I had to step up. That's the kind of stuff I did all my life. Even though I was a violent, bully kind of a person, I would still stand up for those people that were in need. That's just kind of odd how that works. So for me, it's basically simple math. It's to be one with God. to have no middleman. There's nothing in between God and myself. Yes, Jesus is a great spirit to jump onto and to have and to be as a guide. But Jesus isn't the answer. Jesus is part of the answer. Okay? Go directly to God. I practice forgiveness for others and for myself especially. I try my hardest to remove judgment from my eyes. When I see people, I don't immediately go to, ooh, what are they wearing? Or, wow, they look like they're a criminal, that kind of stuff. And I try to seek balance in all aspects of my life. Not too much of one thing or another. I'm not eating too healthy. I have my ice cream and my popcorn, and sometimes I'll have some sort of sandwich that's got meat in it when I'm trying to be a little bit more like an 80% vegetarian, 20% I don't really care. So it's balance. I am awakening because in my mind, God is, I am, we are, and so it is. Amen and aho. So folks, thank you for listening into this. This podcast series is pretty much going to be just opening up an understanding of somebody that had struggles, darkness, that was just in the process of an entire life looking for God and finally finding God. And that's why I'm calling it My Awakening. I look forward to sharing more podcasts in this podcast series as well. I hope to hear from you soon. God bless you all. I love you and thank you very much for your time.